Sue Smith sitting in for Aaron Rand on this Friday afternoon, and not too much to laugh about in the news in the week that was. And what a week it was in politics. Luckily, it's Friday, and that means we have Tom Mulcair on board. Tom, of course, is the former leader of the NDP and the official opposition, and a CJAD 800 commentator. And this segment is brought to you by Carney Heat. Prepare for the upcoming winter with a Carney heat pump or furnace from Guaranteed Industries. 514-342-3400, your air conditioning professionals since 1957. Sorry, brought to you by Guaranteed Industries. Tom, hello.
Hey, Sue, I think this is the first time you and I have been on CJAD together.
I think it definitely is. Not the first time we've spoken, though. Yes, it is.
No. It's anything but the first time we've spoken, but it's great to be on CJAD 800 with you, because you're right. It's been a heck of a week.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know where to start, but let's start with the Memorandum of Understanding between Alberta and the federal government. So is this a win for Carney?
It's a huge win for Carney because he's standing there with a beaming Danielle Smith. He hasn't given away the farm. Mm-hmm. You really have to look at this thing. There are a lot more conditions than people give it credit for. And I understand Stephen Guilbeault for saying, okay, it was the drop that made the vase overflow. And he quit cabinet and on a question of principle, and that's fine. He's a former environment minister, and I know what that feels like.
Yep.
But I have to tell you, when I look at the details of what Carney Smith put together, she had already abandoned a massive project in Alberta to build new technologies for carbon capture and storage. Well, that's being put back on. And as she said, look, Carney wouldn't have signed if I hadn't put it back on, and I wouldn't have put it back on without this deal. So it is the type of win-win. I think they're going to be able to talk to the First Nations. There's a requirement under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People that says you have to have prior informed consent. That's written right in there. Canada's a signatory. And we have all of our own constitutional obligations to respect their treaty rights, their inherent rights. So nobody gets a pass around Indigenous rights in Canada. They're going to be respected. So there are some people already saying, well, as far as I'm concerned, none of these West Coast nations are going to agree. Well, you're not them. They get to look at it themselves. And look, Sue, if you go up to James Bay, as I've had a chance to do, look at the towns on the Ontario side of James Bay and look at the towns on the Quebec side. There's no comparing them. On the Quebec side, much more infrastructure, better development, a lot of economic development that they've been able to put together with the monies that they've received from the James Bay project. Same thing with the Inuit. So there is a possibility to do exactly what David Eby, the Premier of BC, has already just done and signed for liquefied natural gas. Get a big project going with the First Nations on board, and he wanted that. So Eby's, I think, trying to have it both ways. He wanted and got his own deal. And Carney and the feds helped get the First Nations on side for that big deal. Now Carney is saying we need a second pipeline. I agree with Smith because we've got to get revenue for Canada because Trump has cut us off from so much of the revenue. And basic things that people don't think about, but if the equalization payments to the provinces were to drop by 40% because our GDP couldn't support it anymore, guess what? Quebec would be the first to suffer and the one to suffer the most. So I think that people have to understand that it is a balancing act, to use an expression that was that Stephen Guilbeault was fond of. And I think in this case, Carney has mostly pulled it off.
Okay, so I'm super interested to hear you say that. I did not think that would be your take, because certainly yesterday, the David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, to your point, was, we've been working so hard on this, flies in the face of that. Stephen Guilbeault resigns, and we heard from First Nations people saying there's no way. I guess I was going to ask you if he sold the environmentalists out. It sounds like you're saying no, or maybe not yet. But I guess the big question mark is the tanker ban. Like, is that really going to be on the table, do you think?
So I literally know the main place that they're thinking of, which is, because I've gone from one end to the other, it's called the Douglas Channel. Mm-hmm. First of all, the North Shore, the northern part of the BC coast is very rough. It's like the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Yeah. It can be very rough. The Douglas Channel, a lot calmer, many different First Nations along there. They have expressed in the past their outright opposition. Trudeau put in the tanker ban, which was his way of locking the door to more pipelines. Right. And so that would have to be lifted. But can it be done safely? That's the key question, and I believe the answer is yes. because there are rough seas in a lot of places around the world, like the North Sea, where Norway has been able to exploit its own natural resources and put $1 trillion US in the bank for future generations. That small country doesn't even have a 10 million population. And they've been able to do that because they've been wise in how they've exploited and gone after their natural resources. We've been dumb. Peter Lougheed, the former premier of Alberta, used to say, why don't we start behaving like the owners that we're the owners of these natural resources? Because we're blessed with them, but we don't. So I think that Carney is the first prime minister we've ever had who's had an economist's view of this, and he understands the environmental side of it, and he knows he can get it done. Now, I'm not naive. I've been through too many years of Trudeau promises that were broken, but Carney has one line that he keeps repeating: judge me on my results.
Right.
And I think that that's what we should do.
Right. But also, a lot of people have been saying, well, it's also a bit of political theater because actually there are so many hurdles that, maybe he's just doing this so that he can say, look, we tried, but, we couldn't get Indigenous people on board. We couldn't deal with the tanker ban. And, Danielle Smith, it's all going to be up to you. It sounds like you don't think it's political theater.
She signed on. She's got until July 1st to come up with a proponent for it, which is a nice way for Carney to say, by the way, the Canadian taxpayer just spent $37 billion for the one in the south called the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And we're not coming up with more taxpayers' money. You find a proponent. You find somebody who thinks they can make money building this thing. We'll do everything we can to remove obstacles. We'll help you negotiate with the First Nations. We'll do everything we can to get approvals on the environmental side, but you're going to have to pony up the cash. And so she's accepted that. And she said she's got until July 1st to come up with that. So it's if he is calling her bluff with no intention of doing it, he'll pay a very heavy political price. If he's calling her bluff and he gets her on side, and it really takes away one of the big complaints of the Conservatives, I don't know if you caught it, Sue, but Pierre Poilievre was honestly pathetic yesterday in the House of Commons, just saying, well, the only thing that we need is for the Prime Minister to get out of the way. Really?
Yeah.
Like Stephen Harper was never able to get any of this stuff built, neither the one that Trudeau got built, nor the one that Carney's talking about, and you've got lessons to give to Mark Carney about getting out of the way. Yeah, come on, man. You're still wearing short pants. You don't impress anybody.
All you have to do is show him that picture of Carney and Danielle Smith looking like besties, BFFs.
Beaming from ear to ear.
Beaming from ear to ear. You're totally right. All right, listen, we've been talking about this all day, and I'm dying to get your take on this French debate last night with the NDP hopefuls. I have to tell you, a lot of our listeners being pretty negative and saying, look, it's just not acceptable. What did you think about the debate?
It was embarrassing. It was, and I literally lost sleep over it because Jack Layton and I worked for years to build up the base in Quebec. Yep. We broke through. I got elected in 2007 in a by-election, then got re-elected the first time the NDP got somebody elected in a general election the year after in 2008. And then in 2011, we broke through the Orange Wave. We got 59 seats. And even the year that Trudeau formed government, we still had 15 seats in the province of Quebec for the NDP. Now they're down to 1 and down to 7 across the country. So that's sad in and of itself when you know how much work was done by previous leaders. But what's really sad is to see that there's nobody who speaks decent French putting themselves forward. And I have to say I was surprised that Avi Lewis had picked up his French that much.
Yeah, he was the best for sure.
Right, but he was reading. Right, so there's an old saying, you got to be careful what you wish for. He said, and I can hardly wait to be on Tout le monde en parle. I'm sort of going, okay, buddy, but you're not going to get to read your answers. You don't get to rhyme off these memorized answers. But I think that he had done so much. He deserves to be commended for working so hard to get there. The other person who's supposed to be, a serious candidate, Heather McPherson, cannot speak French, period.
No.
She cannot speak French.
No, I was disappointed in her because she has some interesting ideas. I would like to hear from her, which I guess we will in English.
But she can't say a word in French. And she had 2 or 3 phrases that she knew by heart, and they were very short. And I used to hear Alexa McDonough and Ed Broadbent use these 2 words over and over again. C'est important.
Yeah.
C'est très important. C'est important. So it becomes a verbal crutch because you don't know what else to say. And I'll bet anybody a coffee that she must have said c'est important at least 25 or 30 times last night because she had not a heck of a lot else to add to it. The other 3 weren't even in it. They couldn't literally could not speak one single word of French. So they tried to. There were times when poor Carl Mélanger, who, by the way, you saw the 4 pictures of the former leaders. So you had Alexa McDonough, you had Jack Layton, you had me, and you had Nicole Turmel. You had big pictures of us behind them. And Carl Belanger, who was the moderator, has worked for all four of them. and he's quite the guy. And he professionalized the evening far more than it deserved.
Yes, and I thought he was extremely good-natured and kind to all of them, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, but he knew what the deal was.
Well, of course.
Right? And he had to try to make it into something that wasn't an absolute embarrassment. Yeah. So even though Belanger did everything that he possibly could, and he did great, but you can't hide the fact that they can't speak French.
But not to pile on, and I'm up against time, but I just want your take on what a lot of people have been saying on our phone lines and text lines, which is that the NDP is just not taking this seriously, because if they did, they would not put 5 candidates that none of whom can speak French.
Well, try this one on for size, because it was somebody in our immediate vicinity at CJAD 800 who asked the question. And then a short time later, somebody very serious and connected in Ottawa went down the same route. And they were both asking about why not Stephen Guilbeault to head up the NDP.
Yes, I've heard that too. Yeah.
And that would be fantastic for them. I think that it would respect the legacy of Jack Layton. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen.
Well, he's still a Liberal for now, an acting Liberal, even though he's not in caucus. So
right. Absolutely right, and people have to understand that you don't get elected as a cabinet minister; you get elected an MP. So if you leave cabinet, you're still an MP. But
you got no insight there, Tom?
Not beyond those two talks today, and but I'm still fascinated at the thought of it. Let's start a movement. Let's put the idea out there.
Okay, great talking to you, Tom. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, Sue.
You too.
Take
Bye.
Care. Bye.
That is Tom Mulcair, former leader of the NDP, of course, and the official opposition, and a regular commentator here on CJAD 800.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.